Hi everyone, welcome back into the studio. We're going to continue on with the painting here, and I had to take a little break, but now we're back at it again. One of the things that I did though was I worked on finishing up some of the body and did a little bit there onto the wing, and I filmed a couple of those clips, so let's just take a moment, take a look at some of that. Following that same thing of putting on the warms, the cools, and lights, slight variations in color. Let's take a look at those. Okay, so this is a nice photo here of the palette that I used, and you can see as I set up my colors over here on the right side, very cool, and then slowly into a medium, like, you know, a slightly warm color, and then really warm right here into the center, right in this area here with the yellows and the whites, the yellow oxides and the whites and stuff. So this painted the majority of the body of the owl. I did some more backgrounding right back up over here, but this is a good thing. You know, you can do a screen capture or whatever, or just take a photo of this, or I'll put a photo of this in the owl as well, so you can kind of see the colors and you can see the variety of the colors. And what I do when I'm working that, you know, I use the majority of the time, I use that number 6 filbert, and I really like that. And then just slight tonal variations. Add a little bit of that blue violet to the yellow just to cool it just a little bit, and add that light. The other thing I do, and you saw in some of those clips, is I take the edge of a white piece of paper like this, okay? So here's my owl. I put the owl right here next to this particular area here, and then what I do is I mix up the color that I think I'm close, and you can see very warm over here and cool over to this side, and that's when I hold it up to the side here. And so like in this area, you can see, yeah, I'm pretty close to what that color is right there with this color right here, and it's just a slightly cooled yellow color, which has a bit of our tan from our burnt sienna and green, and then I lighten it up. And remember, when you're lightening up, you always lighten up a little bit more because it's going to dry down. You lighten up about 10% more, or value more, because it's going to dry down. But using an edge of a paper like this and holding it up to your photo, making sure you get that color close, and then you can go over and apply that color, and that's what I do. And so you'll see the cooler colors that I used up over here. You'll see them there, and you'll see that I use that to help color match those particular areas there. So using a white paper like this helps a lot and can help you zero in and identify some of those colors. Now I'm going to go back to my slightly larger photo here. What we got to do is, well, we got to continue on. So I did the wing and stuff up here, and in the photo, like I show the photo of the wing, you'll see that the wing is a little bit flatter, just a little bit. Just take a look at that for a second, because part of this is I like to teach you guys how to see some of this stuff, and that's for me, is I'm constantly practicing on that as well, constantly trying to refine my eye and see a little bit more. And as you get along in this painting, you're going to start to see a little bit more. But see how that lighter tone is pretty much even across the front of the wing here. I decided to put a little bit more of a light hit right in here, so you'll see it lighter here than you do here. That is what I've decided to do. You know, and that's up to you. That's an artistic expression. You can do that or not. But I will, you know, this is where I take that photo, and I, just like I said, I'm not going to paint the owl quite as yellow as he is, and I'm going to add some other areas of lighter contrast that I think I need into the painting. So I'm going to put my bigger owl right up here again, the full size of it, so I can look at the photos here for the wing and the tail. Excuse me. And then I also have him back up here bigger on the monitor, and on that monitor here everything is a little bit more blue than it is here. But you see I'm pretty close. There's some areas that, like, I popped his head out a little bit more white in here, and I put some textures in here, and we can even add more textures later on if we decide to do that. That's for us to decide. So what I'm going to do now is come back in and work on this. I have some undercoat. You have a couple of ways in which you're going to do this. One is, like I've showed you before in other videos, you can put a light coat of extender on and work on top of that. I do like to do that from time to time. I'm not going to do that today because I'm going to be tonal painting, mixing the tones for each of those areas and painting them in, kind of like what I did here on the body. But at any time, you can come in and use any kind of glazing technique. And you've seen me do that before on white flowers and stuff like that, where you come in and find a, you know, I could use a warmer, softer gray, yellowish kind of tone if I wanted to have him warmer right in here. Well, let's just show you that, okay? So you can use a glazing technique. You don't have to always do all the tones. So let's just take that warm tan kind of color, which is our burnt sienna, pine green. Let's add a bit of white to that. We got a warmer tan color here. I'll add a bit of extender to this. Now, let's say I wanted to warm up even a little bit more. I could add a tiny bit of yellow oxide to this. That warms it. Maybe just a touch of white, okay, to that. So you see I got this real warm color. Now, what I can do is I'll take a bigger brush here. And let's say I wanted, so you get close. Let's say you're in here and you're close, but you're not, you're not right where you want to be inside the owl here. Maybe you want to do something a little different. And I like him, so I probably won't keep this on there. But so let's just say I wanted to warm in here. You go to a glazing technique. And so see, watch how this changes. See how I could come in here with this glaze, not disrupt my brushwork at all, but I can push this warmer color right into some of this area, back it out in a few areas. Now I can leave that in there. I can take out certain areas here like I like to do with my finger, or I can come in and you can see it adds quite a bit in there. Maybe I'll leave it. Because it works. But you could come back in, and one of the things I always do, when you do tint like that, and that's the beauty of acrylics because they're dry, I can come in and tint. You can come back in and set a few, like I can use this brush here with a little more just white in the textures and set that back up on top even a little bit more, and look at it, just pops them just a little bit more. So when you're painting with the acrylic like that and it's drying, and you can, and if your tones are off just a little bit, don't go repaint the whole thing. Just mix up a tone, glaze it over the surface. But what I like to do when I tint like that is I like to do what I call sink the tint. I like to take the light color that's associated in that area, and in this area it is white. So I like to take that white color and just hit the tips of some of that toned area there, like I could have just a little bit right out here. And see what that does is it sets the tint into the owl by putting the highlight back up on top of it. And I call that sinking the tint into the surface. So a highlight or a shine or something sits back up on top. Okay, so let's go back in and let's look at the tails. And you'll see we have a warmer tone and a cooler tone right up there, right in front. Now, you can mix up a base, and I don't mind doing that kind of stuff. Is just take some of your burnt sienna and your green here, mix that together until you got yourself somewhere in here. And like I say before, I don't always mix exactly the same color each time, but we'll mix up just kind of a nice warm. That is kind of a nice warm. I could have maybe a touch of yellow oxide in there. Yeah, see how that warms that up quite a bit. So that's a good warm, not a real light in value. Oh, the other thing I wanted to show you guys was I noticed this that was so funny. Here was the value scale that I showed you in the first video, part 1. And then look at those tonal colors here that I made. They're right, those tonal colors are right in line with what this scale was here. So if you if you have that and you can print this off, this scale right here, I found this scale right here and this one in combination, and then you have the cooler one over here. Those are, because look at the cooler one compared to my cooler colors over here. These are really accurate to what this owl is. So make sure you print off this to help your eye see that color, okay? So here I have this real warm, and then and if I add a little open medium to this or a little extender, this will stay for the last part of this painting today, so I don't have to mix this again. But again, this is kind of like my base. I'm going to change it over and over again. I'll take a little bit over here to the side, maybe a bit of my violet color, but my violet is a little heavier onto the blue. I like the violet, and on the owl here, he's just a little heavy, so his cool colors are just a little heavier blue, and we'll lighten this up a bit. That's just a little too much blue. Here we go. That's a good, look for a good cool color here. Not too much greenish, so a little bit more of that. If it goes too greenish on it, get a little bit more of that violet in there. And that's a good one. And again, we'll add some little open medium or a little bit of the extender medium and stuff to that, and that's a pretty color. And it could be a little lighter, but again, white is easy to add. So, if I'm going to err, I tend to err to the dark side because white is just a real simple addition during your painting to do that. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to look up over here, and if you look at your photo, you can see there's the warm color that tracks through here and cool color. So see, it has a warm side and a cool side. Here's a warmer feather sitting on top of a cooler feather. So, and then down through here, it goes mostly to those cooler sides and stuff here. So I want to make some variations to this. But good variations will also vary the color. So we'll put out a little bit of burnt sienna and green and a little bit of the yellow. These will be nice little subtle warmths that I can make here. We'll add some of this base. And this is where you can say, okay, well, I'm going to put some of this out and test it against my edge. So this is what I do. I'll test that, and I'll look at that color right there, and I'll hold it up against, and you can see the owl. It's kind of hard for you but the owl is a little bit more gray. So then what I do is I just go right over here, add a bit of that gray to it, that cooler color. And I saw that I was a little bit dark, so I add a bit of light. And it's probably going to be a bit more light than that. Let's just try this color. Now see, it's cooled and it's grayed a little bit. Do you see that? It's grayed a little bit more. And I'll hold that up there, and I can be a little bit more blue. So I step off I don't disrupt it. That's a good color still. I'll step off to the side here, and I'll gray it or blue it up a little bit more. And so you can see it getting a little bit more blue. This is how I track my colors. Now all of this is going to stay nice because I added the extender and open medium to it. And that's the color right there. That is the color that's right there. Do you see that? That came out kind of neat. It worked. And so I'll use that. Now, as I come over here to put in that feather, it points up just a bit, and I'll come in and I'll pull across and I'll put in that feather. Now, it's a little warmer than some of the tone that I applied first, so I'll use that. I'll just push this around a bit here, okay? And I'm going to let some of that original tone show through there because that's going to give the interest. Now, see, when you look at that and you look at that, you say, "Ooh, yeah, that has the interest in it." Now, the lower part of it is going to be more gray. This other feather that sits below that will be a little bit more gray. And so if I go over to this other color, you can see that here. And I'll pull this other feather in just like that, see? And work that a bit. I love the edge of the paper towel or your finger. If you're using oils, don't use your finger. Use a brush, okay? And then I will see where is my shadows in there. There's a bit of shadow. Now, for the shadow, if I wanted to go a darker shadow, I'll get a violet, sometimes a little green, a little burnt sienna. All this works. I love like I said before, the blue and the burnt sienna. It's a pretty shadow color. There'll be just a little bit of the shadow for the feather here, just like that, okay? And so you can see, and you can put the veining in onto the feather if you want to go, that detailed. I'm going to, because I see it in the photo, so I'm gonna add a little bit there to that, a little bit of that color. See, a little bit of that tone. I don't want to eliminate everything I did before, but I just want to have some of that tone out there. And this nice lighter color right out here will work pretty nice. And I'll need my stick here to really to define that up here. So maybe I'll come right up here first to this one. Up by the top, you'll see that lighter veining. And so that lighter vein line. And I'll do that a couple times here. You can switch to a smaller brush. But like I've told you, 1,000 times here, guys, use as large a brush as you comfortably can in an area when you're painting Alaprima like this. Because that causes your strokes, your marks, to have more variation in them as you try to or set that brush into that size of area. So sometimes you turn it on the side, sometimes on the little edge there. we'll push just a little edge of light right there, and see that paints out some of that shadow. And that adds that detail there to the feather. There's some lighter little strokes. You can just lighten up some of that a bit, and you can start adding some of the lighter details, marks of the lighter detail that you see there. Coming back in, and I'll just kind of smoosh that in with my finger. And so I'll work that in, and then I'm just going to go down each feather. So I see a little bit of shadow, a little bit of gray here onto the next one here. I'll push this over onto its side, and I'll start that particular color. Match that color if you need to. You know, use your paper and match that color. And it's a little more shadow, so I might even add just a bit of darkness to this one. And you'll have the center vein line on the feather, so some of the feathers you will notice will pull in here like this to that center vein line. And that's what's happening on that feather. And then it has the light. You look at this one, it has a light little edge here that is pulling right in here like that. See how I get that nice? That's a nice edge to that feather there. Boom, like that. And we can use a bit of that to pull out from that center vein, and that'll give just a little bit of the contour shape of that feather, the feeling of that in there like that. So you can see, so I'm right up here at this top one here. And of course I've got to add, what do I have to add in there? Yeah, those spots and stuff here. So I'll add those spots that he has here. So I've got to add, there's a little one that's going to be right in there. And it's a bit big. That's a bit big. That's okay. I'll take it out. There'll be one there. So if I get a bit big, I just wipe my brush, pick up a bit of that lighter color, and just push back into it. There, into that spot till I get that color. As a matter of fact, there's just a whisper. Let's grab just a bit of light, maybe right over here to this warmth, slightly warmer. Just a whisper of that tone moving right through. See, I like that, see? I got a little bit of that warm, a little bit of the other tone right into that spot. That's what gives you the interest. When you override those tones, you take that, you know, that extra little minute and you put that other little tone on there. That's what gives the beauty and stuff to the feather. Now, one of the things that you had here, so I'm going to go down his whole side working this like this, and then we'll go down to the wing. But I'm going to go down his whole side working like this. And so one of the things I'm going to do at the same time here is to take this brush, a little bit of my burnt sienna and my green, and a bit of the blue, which we had out here. That's the darker color. Make sure I add some extender so I get a little bit of transparency here. But I want to clean up, and this is what I call the negative painting. I want to negative paint a bit in here because that is what's going to clean this edge right up there on that feather. See how it's going to pop that out, and that's going to look a little closer. Now, on this side, I took that tree a little higher than what it is, and that's okay. That's mine. I like it. But now I have that color there. Now to fade it off, because we have that blur, I just take my brush, tap it in some more extender here, and just scrubby this off like this. This is how I do it. And it feathers off, or it just kind of takes out that any kind of harsh edges. So I clean up and then take it right out into the background. Sometimes I'll maybe work remember how I used the palette knife in earlier in the earlier video and showed you how to set the background, right? So I can use that, and we'll just touch that in there like that and get some of that variation and that interest, maybe a little bit up here. But I do it over and I soften it out with a little bit of extender, and then it pops. Now see how that pops forward. Always relate everything you're painting up against here though. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to paint this, area in here, and down through here. We'll show a couple of clips of that, then we'll come back and I'll show you on the wing. Okay, all right. Well, and we're going to use those colors and that technique, and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so that does the tail there. You can see that there. I could clean up right along in here, you know, I mean, which would really help him advance. You can kind of see that in there. So let's do that. You can see it on that other one there. So let's do that. We'll take a little white, a little burnt sienna, a little green, maybe a touch of blue here. And we'll thin this down with some extender medium, kind of close to the color that's in here. You can see it's not perfect, but it is close here. That's all I need. You know, so when you're cleaning up like this, negative painting, you're cleaning up like this, take it like that. See how that cleans that edge. And again, like we said before, it's all about edges, guys. And then I'll take a little extender and just run through that, push that out right here, and see it just, that taking the extender and pushing like that just sends that out a bit. And we can even advance, you know, it all depends. Now, I do want a little bit of a lost edge, but you can see just by cleaning this edge right here, you really bring that part of the tail forward. It's not as much as clean as that light dark contrast and stuff we have there, but it does bring that part of the tail a little bit farther forward. And you know, some artists, though, would really lose the edge back here, and I'm not opposed to that. We're going to do it here a little cleaner because he's that way in the photo, but, you know, I'm not opposed to leaving that a little bit more lost as well. Okay, let's go back up and work in here. Now, like I said before, you have lots of things to paint acrylic. This large area, I'm going to be streaking a lot of color, and you know my background is that matte, so and it does drink up stuff. pretty well, pretty quickly, the moisture out of the paint, which I love to do when I'm doing roses and stuff. But if I'm going to do these feathers here, I might just put a light, just not puddles, just a light coat, and you run your hand over it, and you can feel that it's there, and that will help us move color a little bit better. Now we'll go back to our larger brush here. Let's put in the gray tips that you're going to see down here into the feathers, and then we'll work in the midground area. So that gray that I had there is probably really close, very close. It's a little lighter than what I have here on my palette now. Do you see that? It's a little bit lighter. So let's take some of this down, lighten it up right in here. And we can vary that with a touch of our warmth and stuff here as well. But let's take that right down here. Let's test this color right here. Yeah, it's a little bit too much warm. So I'll cool that back off. A little bit more blue. We might even touch a bit more blue here. And that's a little bit more gray. And that is pretty darn close between that and the other one. So it's a good color to streak with. So what we're going to do is just come in here with that. See, that's a good gray. Put in that edge that we see there of that feather. And then we'll just walk it up here. Just streak it up. Don't take out all of our streak from our original one there. Okay. Let's take some of that color into the next one. It has a little break line, and then that goes in, and it'll go lighter against that edge. I'm going to work a couple of feathers here at a time. So I'll streak this on, and see, I've got some good color underneath here, so I don't eliminate all of that. Leave some of that there. Okay. And I plan on working these feathers a few times because I love this part of the wing, and I think it is just such an interesting part of the painting. So I'm going to work them a couple times here. Make sure I get my drawing covered up there. And we'll push some of this up here. So we'll see the tips of those. And see where the light part of the feather is going to come out as well. And there's a little tiny bit of dark that's on the tip of the feathers. We'll do that here. But let's, for now, just put in this and shape them up a bit. Here. There we go. And kind of see if you can find your drawing, Dave, a little bit, 'cause it's gone. I painted into it a bit. There we go. So we get just a beautiful kind of shape to these feathers. Here we go. Just like that. Now, let's come, that's a very warm, so some warm color, white and yellow oxide. You might even add a little open medium. I'd add the open medium to keep the body to it. If you thin down the white too much, it'll look cloudy, so that when I come in on something like this, sometimes I like to keep the open medium in there because it keeps a little more power to the color. See, so I put that white on. See how much power that does have. And then I can wipe my brush like this, and with that open medium and that extender, see how it streaks really nice. And I can just work that into that shape of that feather and get some of the movement that you'll see in that feather down that front side of it there. So let's drop that right in here. Here comes the light down, and then streak that a bit. Few longer strokes than what you see me do on other parts of him, because this is the big feathers. These are his primary flight feathers, so they're longer, and you can use a longer brush mark with them here and part those shapes there. That's kind of neat. Let's push some of that light right up here and down. It fades into this part of the feather. And let's walk that up streaks, but not big, long, but, I mean, 3 inches, something like, depending on size you birch, but don't make them too long because that'll be distracting, but give it a good length to it because these are the feathers themselves, the primaries. So we'll streak some of this right down like that. That's good. And always up along that edge and then right up into his body here a bit. We'll push some of that here. And I'll leave wherever you can some of that underpainting. That's so important. We put those tones in there. And, some artists will like let a wing like this completely disappear into the original underpainting. And that looks great as well. Now, I can see if you look up close, I think you'll see some white and then some real yellowish tones, warmer tones down there by the tip. And so I want to capture that feeling. So I'm going to put a little yellow, warm it up a little bit right down here. Just a bit of it into a few areas on these larger primaries down here that I see that. Right down in there. And that's carrying. Now what does that do? See, that carries some of that warm tone down from his body down there as well. And I always tell you, to carry that color. You make a tone, carry that color. Well, this is a good example where that color can carry down. Let's take a little gray and a little bit of this warm color. Will come up with a kind of not completely white value, but and we'll push this edge here of this wing on. Now, that is really distinct, and see how that really comes forward. And in the photo, that really comes forward. It's the edge, but it's up to you as the artist to determine now how much of that edge you're going to leave. I'm going to take it off slightly, just by pulling through like that with the paper towel. Take it off slightly, because I don't want it to compete with everything that's going on up here. So I'm going to pull the edge off. So I'm going to use a little artist license here and pull that edge off, soften that out just a bit, blur it up just a bit. And that's my choice. I'm going to take some of that warmth and just push that right into the feather here. So across some of that lighter gray that we did, that gray, so that it creates like the veining in the feather here. And I'll take that darker gray. You can see on that feather it has that darker tip there. And I want to put in those tips of those. Let's do that before we get too far forward. Burnt sienna blue. Let's come in that real dark tip right here. That's just so interesting. And we'll drag that up this side a bit, and another little mark of it here. Just little marks there. And see, I'll let that go. That paint is still wet because I put that extender on right away, right? And so it's still wet. And so if I touch it a couple times, see, if I leave the mark like that, it doesn't soften out. If I touch that a couple times, it will soften out as it blends and blurs down into that wet base that we have there. Sometimes I do that. Let's just leave this mark there. That's a little bigger than that one, but that's okay. And we'll push this across there. And some soft ones. And remember, if you really want to incorporate it, you come back and hit up against these with the light color. But this is softening in because everything's so wet. So I might not have to do that. But that is something that you always look to. With go. Let's put in some real soft. There's some softer, like little, and you can just blur those with your finger too a bit. But you can just barely lightly see those, see? So let's just put in a indication of those here, some spotting. Get it a little bit lighter, very soft, just a little bit darker, warmer shade here on the wing. Here we go, just like that. That's pretty. And maybe, now I'm going to go to an edge of a smaller brush here. Let's find the perfect brush here, my number 6 filbert here. And I'm going to take some of this dark here. Check that color again, this dark burnt sienna and a little blue, just a little bit of blue. And I'm going to use this for a little detailing here on some of these edges and stuff here that I see. And it's just because this lower part of the wing here I find extremely interesting, and there is a contact shadow between the feathers here. And so I want to capture that in just a few areas, especially down here, little bits of detail. See, and it just pulls your eye down, right down here. Your eye moves over across this and pulls right down into some of that detail. I like that. And so I'll just lightly use my smaller filbert here. Used it on the chisel and the flat to kind of give you some variation here. Maybe just little edges there. Pop those out. Let's go back to our bigger one here for a second. Some light and some warm. Now, this is where I am going to, we talked at the very beginning about pulling some textures. Pulling textures up into here and painting it a couple of times to get some textures. I'm not going to paint as much as I have here, but I do want to pull some of these textured strokes right down here. And they're big, powerful strokes. And see, I'll let it run out. I'm going to let it run out here like this here. But that's going to pull in some of that texture. So I'll pull some right in here. Don't put on so much that you lose all that undertone. I want to preserve that undertone, but I want to break up some of that wing coming down here, if that makes sense. Here's his shadow, his cast shadow, and I want to pull some of these textures. So I'm right down in here, not perfect white, but like a value 9 or so, and I can keep it thick with some open medium. The open medium helps you slide, and I want this to slide a little bit. See how I get this? See where it gets where it leaves off and some of the shadow shows back up through. That's what I love about the open medium. I'll get that feeling through there, and I like that. I use that on water and on brush and stuff like that. You see me in landscapes and stuff with that. Maybe a little thicker right up in this area. This part of his secondaries of his wings. This is the underside of the secondary, so it gets pretty heavy right in there. Let's build that up a little bit more right up here, pulling down right like that. So see, that is giving a lot of power here to his wing, but yet it's not taken away from his head. I don't want to take away from his head, but I want to increase the streaks here a little bit, right down, because his wing is a big area here. And so we'll build that. I'm going to build that another stroke right there, and maybe a stroke or two right in here. Blur that out a bit. See, get this interest right in here. That's what I'm looking for. Light, shadow, interest, contrast. But not as much as I have going on in the head. So constantly refer back to that head and make sure that it contains the most. That's what we want to do there. And there'll be little touches of some lighter things on the edge of the feathers here that you'll see in your reference photo. Maybe we put some through there, but it's just a tiny value. It's just one value, maybe lighter, because you don't want this to be too stripy. If you make too much contrast between your lights and darks, the wing will get really stripy, so we don't want to do that. And I think I'm going to build just a little bit more right up in here. And that could be warmer, but I think that that's pretty good right in there. Okay, and so we have that. Now we'll step back just a bit here so we can see a little more of the painting here, and you'll see just how he advances here, and I like that. And then this is where I will look. So I like how that's coming there, and I'm not sure I would do any more really to that wing. I like how that wing is coming down through here, but there's some areas like right up underneath here where we have, you know, a lot of that interest here. You might look at maybe putting in a little bit more blurred shadow or snow or something in there. Let's take a look. We'll take or soften it just a bit. There's some brush movement in there. Maybe we want to soften that edge. First I'll put on a little bit of this snow that we had, which is really close to the owl color. Just push that around. Get rid of that brush mark. There was a harsh brush mark right in there. And we'll that just softens that out. And see how that pushes him forward. It gives a little bit more of a defined edge right in there. Pushes him forward. Look for areas of that. Like, I like this, but that little light spot right there kind of disrupts the flow, the side-to-side, the horizontal flow of that particular area. So I'll take some burnt sienna here, and I just love burnt sienna on this painting. Burnt sienna, a little bit of the blue here. We have a bit of that light here. Boom. And see how getting rid of that little tiny light there. See what that does? Isn't that amazing? I mean, and that's the thing that I've learned is when I'm looking through for the final look of something through a painting, is I've learned to look for these little areas and make sure my eye is flowing through the strong horizontals and the strong verticals. And this is a strong horizontal, and I want that eye to flow through. And so I don't create, I always look, another thing I look for is what I call tangent lines, where that color stops. And so I could carry that color lightly right across here and let it kind of fade away over here a little bit more. Just blur that out there. See, and that color carries through that. See how that advances his wing, because your eye is carrying this horizontal line through there rather than it stopping right here. Now that horizontal line of color carries through, your eye sees it better. So, you know, and that's one of the things I look at when I paint for depth. Some people go, God, you get so much depth, is because I paint these horizontal. I stay away from what I call the tangent line of color, and horizontal lines I concentrate on. So I'll carry that across, maybe right up underneath here. You know, right into that area there, and push that through. See how you see that color carrying through there. Now I can break this down a bit so it's rough it up a bit, maybe leave some of that. But you know, all these nice interesting brush marks sometimes will hinder the owl himself, and so you may come back, and that's an individual artist's choice. You know, there's some artists that like that, okay? And that's fine. That's an individual artist's choice. That's the beauty of what it is that we do. We're all going to be a little different, you know? But I might come in and just soften some of that line, maybe push a little bit of that here and there. You know, that one shadow tone that carries completely through. I may come in and look for that burnt sienna blue. And this is something that I really love to do. Like, I might really push it right in here. And I just went into his head a little bit, so, but I'm a professional, I'll fix that. But look at how that pushes him forward. Isn't that amazing? It's those little tiny additions of color now that just, and I might look at it this way on the angle and carry some of that forward right in here and push that through. I do this on florals a lot, and people always goes, man, it's amazing the depth and stuff that you get on some of your flowers. And this is the thing I do. And I learned to do this on landscapes. And I use it on florals, I'll use it on here. Now I'm using it on this, this owl right here. And you can see how that just, boom, here he comes forward. I was thinking at the very beginning of this painting, maybe I'm going to put a few grasses or something up here, but I don't think I will. I kind of like the simplicity of the blur. It's very, very close to our original photo of him, which is that nice blurry line and stuff of him. We've captured quite a bit of that. And so I kept him, you can see I kept him more white right up in here, pushing in a little more contrast. But you know, now that you look at this photo, he does have that nice dark right up there. So that's pretty good. That's getting it. We could do a little more. So let's just do a little more. It's our painting. We can do what we want, right? Let's just try a little more. A little more Phthalo Blue and that burnt sienna, which warms that shadow. And let's just come in there a little bit more and see if we like that. Yes, I do. I like that. I like that a lot. Look at what that does. Maybe, I love that burnt sienna, that warm we put down here. Let's just take part of it and cool it just a bit more. And bam, maybe, let's get brave. Right up underneath here into this feather. Not the whole thing, just that one little area. You know, we do this, I do this with little highlights. You see me in some of the landscapes highlights and stuff. I call it the spark. And that's what we do. But look at this. Remember, I just put that on there. Look at how it made that blue underneath, which was so dark earlier, lighter. And what's that kind of contrast called? Simultaneous contrast, right? And so you may want to come in and adjust a few things there. But I like how this wing is advancing. I like everything. I'm going to let this completely dry down. And then I think that's probably going to be it for him. And I like it. I don't want to touch him too much because then I'll lose the spontaneity of the painting as well. But I'll let this wing dry down and then decide. And then I can, when I put a coat of extender over him, everything is going to jump up in the colors, and then I'll take a final look. And, you know, then you can come in advance. Now, some of the wildlife painters that I really, really enjoy will take their palette knife and final lights like this, and you can do this. And they'll work the final lights, and that does look, I know it's hard for you to see, but it looks pretty amazing to push that much paint. A lot of paint, just push that texture right in there because that just looks amazing in there. And that'll get that. And you can they would take a swap of that texture and just kind of drop that down. And the palette knife, see how the palette knife gives those highs and lows? And it's hard for you to see, I know, but give it a try, you know. And it just looks amazing, and you can do that. But keep that wing kind of simplistic. So there you go. There's the owl. Okay, there's the owl. I imagine I have about 4.5, 5 hours, maybe 6 into him. This is the body is what took the longest and working those tones in there. But take your time and working in there, and he's a lot of fun. He's a lot of fun to paint. Very, very different. I think I'm just going to leave my original impression of all of that the same because I really like that area of his body and stuff, okay? All right, so there you go. There's the owl. Those of you that are in the memberships, I uploaded already the photos, everything, the line drawings. Just go over to the community page. And if you're a member, and just scroll through, you'll see all the photos. There's a photo of the owl, and then I think I uploaded 5 of them right in there, so you can scroll through those photos, print off what you want. There's also a line drawing there, okay? For the rest of you, thank you very much for joining me. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. click that little bell for some notifications when we do have a new video up, and we really appreciate you watching our videos and painting along with us. And as everything, if you have a question, just hit the comments down below. I can't always get to all of them. I'm trying to catch up. I'm a little bit behind, but I'll try to do that and ask those questions, and I'll be happy to answer those, okay? And anything that you want to see me paint, just drop it down there. Had a request for yesterday for ringneck pheasants, so I'm probably going to do one of those here in the future as well. Okay, thanks very much for joining me, and don't forget to look at that part 1 on those mixing of those colors before you watch just the painting of the owl in the part 2 and now part 3. Okay, all right. I'll see you guys the next time, and I think it's time for us to do some really intricate still lifes, so we might head back into some of those as well. All right, okay, see you guys later. Take care. Bye bye.